What up, tag team? It's your boy ScooterRay, and y'all know what I'm here for. NXT Vengeance Day 2023. Now, this is the first premium live event to be on the road for NXT in a little bit. It's been a minute. And they were in Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken. And we had 6 matches on the card, 4 being championships. And let's see how it goes. Opening up the show, North American Championship, Wesley versus Dijak. And of course, when Dijak first returned, he was targeting Wesley for reasons, saying, he's going to dole out his own brand of justice, all of the above. And finally, they had their match. Wasn't a bad match at all. It was definitely interesting to see with Dijak being, I want to say 6'8", 6'7", and Wesley, I don't even think it's like 5'9", 10", and so it's such a height difference. And them still pulling off what they pulled off. Like at one point, Wesley hit a nice little German suplex on Dijak. It was pretty back and forth. And once again, you know how when I talk about championship matches and things like this, it didn't feel like a title change. It felt like a pay-per-view match. It felt like, premium live event match. It felt like title wasn't going to change. I don't know why. It just didn't feel that way. But there was one scary spot where Dijak was going to powerbomb West off the top rope, but West reversed it to a Hurricane Warner. And Dijak didn't fully rotate because I guess the spot kind of happened a little late-ish. And Dijak kind of landed on his head. Excuse me. Like, it looked pretty gnarly. Excuse me, sorry. And but like one of the ending sequence, Dijak was going for the top rope moonsault on the outside, but Stacks and D'Angelo King pushed Wesley out the way. Dijak landed on them, got back in the ring, took a super kick, and took Wesley's little backflip Pele kick type move, and that ended the match 1, 2, 3. And I don't know when it happened in the match, but Wesley's middle finger was just clocked, and he held it up. It was a match to kind of show, but Wesley retains. Now I kind of wonder what is the plans with the North American Championship. Are they going to give it to Tony D so he can finally have gold? Like, are they trying to save it up for some triple threat? Like, are they going to try to have a multi-man match at Stand and Deliver? Because they did announce that's the next event earlier, day 1. So we're going to have Stand and Deliver, I think it said noon, and WrestleMania day 1 later on that night. So I don't know if they're going to plan a multi-man, triple threat, but we'll see. But Wesley retains. Next up, NXT Women's Tag Team Championship. Caden Carter, Katana Chance versus Fallon Henley, Kiana James. Now, due to my work schedule, I missed the last couple of weeks of NXT, and I was quite shocked when I saw that they became a team. So I'm assuming it had something to do with, excuse me, sorry, it wouldn't be a tag video without a yawn. So I'm assuming it had to do with Briggs and Briggs and Jensen, because Kiana and Jensen have started to kind of have this relationship, and I guess since they're not fighting for the bar, since they're not fighting over Fallon Henley's family bar anymore, I guess they could be friends. But yeah, so once again, the moment I saw this match, I knew what was going to happen. Uh, wasn't a bad match. Um, a lot of back and forth, and they kind of played into what Chase U kind of did at first, with Duke kind of using underhanded tactics, and Andre Chase was like, "No, we don't do that here, Chase U." They kind of did that. Kiana was kind of using underhand tactics, while Fallon was like, "No, we don't do underhanded, sneaky heel things." But the match ended with uh Fallon. Did she have a rolled up? I think she had a rolled up, but Kiana was on the opposite end because she took care of I want to say it was Caden, but she held the feet of the one Fallon was pinning. 1, 2, 3, new tag champs. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some type of dialogue come Tuesday that, they technically won under underhanded tactics. So we'll see how that goes. But once again, this felt like a title change. It felt like the moment I saw this match build, I was like, okay. And not to disparage the women's tag team scene in NXT, but there aren't a lot of teams, so it made sense that a hodgepodge team was going to get it. I thought they was going to eventually give it to Ivy Nile and Tatum Paxley, or the kind of newly formed Isla Dawn and that's not her old name, Alba Fire. That's her old name I was about to say. So I thought maybe Alba Fire and Isla Dawn was going to be the new champs, but hey, they still could be. Stand and deliver. It's in April, so they have enough time to potentially build it if they want to take the belts off of them this fast. So they'll still have the rest of February, March. So they'll have almost a 2-month reign if they want to do something like that. But yeah, and new Fallon Henley, Kiana James, arguably the match of the night. 2 out of 3 falls. Apollo Crews, Carmelo Hayes. Um, before Carmelo beat Apollo, and then it was like, nah, you won, but it still ain't proved who was the best. So let's do 2 out of 3 falls to really prove who's that guy and who's potentially next up for the NXT championship. Um, Carmelo's really him. Like his entrance, him with Trick Williams. Pretty soon, I see Carmelo getting called up, but they can't call Carmelo up without Trick. Trick has to come. They are definitely a package. Like I don't want to be one of them things to where they get called up and they do the WWE way where they split them up reasons, or no, they need to come together. Like that has to be a package deal. Even if they don't, even if they're not confident in Trick Williams' wrestling or anything like that, they're a package deal and they need to be together. But yeah, um, definitely solid action going back and forth. And it actually took a little bit before the first fall happened, but Carmelo got the first fall. And in my head, it was like, oh yeah, this definitely about to be one of them. They're gonna go back and forth and this and third. But ultimately, Trick had a chair that he was sitting in. He tried to slide it in the ring for Carmelo to use. Um, and no, he was going to use the chair if I remember correctly. And then Daba Kato, or Commander Aziz, comes out the crowd to, throw Trick off the apron. And that left the distraction for Carmelo to get the second dub. And it was like, whoa, they let Carmelo get 2 straight. on Apollo, and it was like interesting booking decision. Which to me, the ending felt kind of clunky because with Dabba-Kato coming out of nowhere and the way the whole distraction thing was working out, it felt a little clunky, but it didn't take away from the fact that it was a great match. And like I said, arguably match of the night. And then after the match, Dabba-Kato goes in, picking up picking up Apollo, and then he starts beating up on Apollo and does his little choke bomb on the chair. And so I guess we know Apollo's next beef is Dabba-Kato. So yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they delve into history of, when they were on the main roster and this, that, and the third. But yeah, and also too, Apollo and them red contacts. That ain't it, Chief. I don't know. It looked weird because I remember when I was watching the match, I was like, "This, what?" I was like, "Is he wearing red? Like, what is wrong with his eyes?" But yeah, there's this whole vision thing, and yeah. But yeah, so ultimately, it seems like Carmelo Hayes is going to be primed for number one contendership because basically that's what they were essentially fighting for indirectly, number one contender. So yeah, like I said, arguably match of the night. Carmelo gets two straight, and it was like, all right, let's go. NXT Tag Team Championship Fatal Four Way. The New Day, of course, champs versus Chase U, who had just earned a shot at previous NXT, versus Gallus versus Pretty Deadly. I wish the rules would have been slightly different. I understand because every now and then they do the rules where two or three people or maybe four people are all in the ring at once. But this was the typical two people starting, anybody can tag. So that was kind of awkward at first. That was kind of awkward a little bit because of course you had two teams who weren't participating at certain times. Shout out to the New Day in their Street Fighter gear. Kofi is Blanca, Woods is E Honda. Um, Once again, this felt like a title change. It was kind of very reminiscent of when Dolph Ziggler had won the NXT Championship. You knew it wasn't going to be a super long reign, but you knew the reign was there. Same thing with this. You knew the New Day won it and had the belts, but it wasn't going to be a super long reign. And it came to a head with this match. But it had some great spots, great action. Andre Chase and that Chase U, they to say when that gimmick first debuted, it was very like, I don't know, Chief, but it's over. It's over. And Thea Hale, whether you find her irritating or not, she does bring her energy to the whole Chase U. Like she seems like she is just on 10 all the time. Like, cause she had the little Chase U little, I never knew what they called that little thing, but she was shouting stuff the whole time, just very just energetic and just, you know, riding for her boys, riding for Andre and Duke. Um, of course, Pretty Deadly was trying to get back to prominence of getting the tag team titles back, which was funny because the whole time New Day was trying to get them to get the tag team championships opportunity by, doing these simple tasks and simple lists. But of course, now it evolved into a fatal four way. And, returning Gallus, you know, Gallus boys on top. But it was some great action, some great spots. Even Booker was interesting because I guess he dialed down his of NXT. He dialed down his New Day hate. So it was still little tinges there, but it wasn't as bad as it's been. So maybe somebody must have spoke to Book about the way he'd been talking about New Day. But ultimately it ended, which I'm happy they did it this way, but ultimately it ended Gallus pinning New Day. So they can say that Gallus actually beat the champs. That they didn't beat Chase U or they didn't beat Pretty Deadly. They actually pinned the champs. And new tag team champs, Gallus, which that was my pick. The moment I saw that they came back and the moment I saw that they was in the fray, I was like, those going to be the men to dethrone Woods and Kofi. So we'll see if they're going to try to get Woods and Kofi to get a rematch or they're going to go ahead and just go back to SmackDown full time. We shall see. Next up, NXT Women's Championship Triple Threat. Roxanne Perez versus Gigi Dolan versus JC Jane. So, of course, if y'all been keeping up, Gigi and JC both simultaneously touched the floor at the same time in a battle royal. And it was like, hey, they both win. That's what they wanted. So they both won. And it led to the triple threat. Now, throughout the weeks, which, of course, they show in the hype package, they were slowly sowing those seeds between Gigi and JC because it was like, well, at the end of the day, one of us has to win. They were slowly taking little pot shots at each other. They were both saying Toxic Attraction is going to be the champs, but at some point, one woman had to win this match. And once again, that feeling in the air, it didn't feel like a title change. I mean, especially since Roxanne had won it, at the end of December, mid-December. So her first PLE championship defense, it didn't feel like, it was going to change hands tonight. Great spots. Of course, eventually it led to Gigi and JC fighting each other and things like that. But at times they were still trying to work together because I guess they would rather fight each other to determine who's the champ than have Roxanne, be the determining factor. But they were setting up a table ringside and it failed for them to slam her through. So the way the match ended, they had Roxanne on the turnbuckle. JC was up there with her. Gigi was on the apron. Roxanne kicks Gigi off the apron. Gigi goes through the table. Roxanne hits the pop rocks off the top rope. 1, 2, 3. Roxanne retains. Solid match. Like I said, it didn't feel like a title change, but solid match. I guess the interesting point here is where does Toxic Attraction go from here? Are they still going to stay a team? Are they going to now be solo acts? We shall see. Main event time, NXT Championship, cage match. Braun Breaker, Grayson Waller. Of course, Grayson Waller won his opportunity from being the first Iron Survivor. He got it at New Year's Evil. And how's that match end? It ended no contest. Count out. I really forgot how that match ended. To say January was just last month, I forgot how that match ended. But of course, I want to say it was like a double down. I can't remember. But they didn't like the way it played out. The higher ups didn't like the way it played out because it was like, no, we want definite winner, this, that, and the third. So boom, cage match. This time around, they changed the rules for Grayson Waller sake because I guess Grayson was known to kind of quote unquote run from Braun. So you couldn't win by escaping the cage. You had to win by pinfall submission inside the cage. I remember predicting at first that whoever was going to win the Iron Survivor matches were going to be new champions. Roxanne won, with the whole Mandy Rose situation. Grayson Waller, I figured it was going to happen, but it was going to happen in New Year's Evil. But since they ran it back for Stand and Deliver, I was like, okay, this could potentially be that crowning moment for Grayson. But something just felt off. Something just felt that maybe not. The cage match was okay. Um, I can see why they did a cage match with the whole Grayson run in, and that way it had to finish and end in the ring. But I'm not gonna say it felt unnecessary for the cage, but it was a touch. Um, there was spots here and there. Like it was weird that every time Grayson would kind of go to the cage, whatever, it was like can't win that way. And I know you want to try to hit your spots and things like that, but um, ultimately it led to Braun hitting a spear, and I don't know is the fact the way Braun was hitting Grayson or Grayson was just selling it, but them spears was stiff. But he hit one spear and they was like, he could finish it, he could end it, but he was like, nah, I'm gonna finish it. And he stood Grayson up. Grayson gave that final defiant slap. Braun ran off the ropes, hit him with another spear. One, two, three. Braun retains. Um, the closing minutes of the match, because NXT and APLEs, things can go down when that lower third graphic happens. But the closing seconds of the match, or sorry, the closing seconds of the show, it showed Braun on top of the cage celebrating, and then Carmelo and Trick come out there, and it looks like it's finally happening. Carmelo, Braun Breaker, most likely a stand-in delivery. Um, Now from there, we get a new champ. Will the champ retain? We shall see, because after WrestleMania, they tend to try to do some call-ups. So I guess if Braun loses, I'm assuming whoever loses is going to get called up. And I'm assuming Braun might be the one who loses and he gets called up. Uh, I could potentially see Toxic Attraction. If they stay Toxic Attraction getting called up, um, I can see Indy finally go ahead and getting that call up. I can see Katana and Caden. So that way, since they are a quote unquote true tag team, I can see that call up happening. Um, I don't know if they're ready to bring Chase U up, but I can see it for reasons. I can see Pretty Deadly to add more depth to the tag team roster, especially how their characters are, because I can definitely see Pretty Deadly and the Maximum Male models having a little thing, are Pretty Deadly potentially joining the Maximum Male models. I don't know, but you know, it's always typically call ups after Mania, so we'll see what happens. But that was NXT Stand and Deliver. Sorry, Stand and Deliver. That was NXT's Vengeance Day. Stand and Deliver is in April. Um, Overall, solid show. It's good to see them in front of a huge crowd, because we got used to them at the CWC. So seeing them in a huge crowd was definitely great, because the pops, the the roaring of hearing tens of thousands compared to hundreds. No offense to the CWC, because they do be having that building rocking, but just to hear, the grandness of the music and seeing them actually in front of a big crowd again was definitely great seeing. So hopefully it stays that way. Hopefully they keep NXT, the rest of the PLEs this year, in front of the bigger crowds, and keep the theme shows, of course, at CWC. But that was NXT's Vengeance Day. I'm Scooter Lou. Shout outs to the rest of the fellas in tag. Dizzle, Jaeger, Juggs. Tune in to us. We're still trying to work out these schedules here. Still trying to figure out our schedulings. But tune in. And until next time, good people out there, tag out.